welcome to WiSP World Canada, the magazine show that takes a closer look at Canadian women's sports and the issues. I'm Maria Samson, recording out of Calgary, Alberta, and joining me again today is Sooz Flannigan. Where are you today, Sooz?
I'm down in lovely sunny San Jose, California.
Oh, that is awesome, and a nice change from Victoria, because it's been rainy, maybe?
Well, it rained here for the first week, but it's been really nice and sunny in the last couple of days.
On today's show, we're going to be speaking with Saadia Ashraf. She's the current assistant coach with the Canadian national women's tackle football team. She transitioned from being a player, where she was the quarterback for the national team at the last two World Championships, and I was lucky enough to be her teammate a few years ago now. And so we're going to be speaking to her about the upcoming World Champs in June, as well as the growth of women's tackle football in Canada. So, Sooz, have you ever had any experience playing football?
Well, believe it or not, I played flag football in high school. I was the equivalent of a running back, I'd say. We weren't allowed to tackle, and I remember distinctly not liking the sport because so many women cried when they fell down. I didn't like that so much. I thought I got to find a sport that's a little happier than this. And I actually did like tackling. But we couldn't do it. And so that's about the extent of my experience with football, playing it anyway.
That's funny, because now you go into this other sport, triathlon, which you're basically pushing yourself to the absolute end of your physical limits, but just in a different form.
Well, and I guess there is something about the tackling in there still too, because me and 2000 they're my closest friends, all in the water fighting for position. So I suppose it's a bit like football in that regard. You played with Saadia. How did you get into football?
So football was actually my very first team sport. Going into high school in the province of Quebec here, where I grew up, high school is grade 7 to 11. And so in the summer after grade 6, I apparently, according to my mother, told her that I would be the first girl on the boys football team. And that the end of the summer, I said, Mom, you got to drive me to football practice. And she kind of went, oh, you were serious. And so showed up to boys football practice. I actually wasn't the first girl on the team. There was already another girl who had been playing. And I played 5 years of boys football throughout high school, captaining the Bantam team, I think in grade 9, and then ended up playing 2 years of semi-pro with Saadia for the Montreal Blitz. Kind of in the 2004 and 2007 years. So I went into football with quite a bit of experience, joining the Montreal Blitz when a lot of girls, had never had the opportunity to play football before. So I'm excited to reconnect with Saadia today and hear all about, her dealings with the World Champs team, as well as transitioning into a coaching role.
Mm-hmm.
Before we talk to Saadia, though, we're going to talk about some big news. The Canada Sports Hall of Fame has announced their 2017 class of inductees, and there are 3 women's entries, 2 individual athletes, and 1 team. So we have winter athlete Cindy Klassen, speed skater, Carol Hoon, wrestler, and 2012 Olympic bronze medalist, as well as the Edmonton grads. So first, let's talk about Cindy and Carol, and then we can tell everybody what the Edmonton grads are.
Cindy Klassen is a speed skating legend. She became the only Canadian athlete to win 5 medals in a single Olympics, winning 1 gold, 2 silvers, and 2 bronze in 2006 in Turin, Italy. She later received the Lou Marsh Award as Canadian Athlete of the Year, and she first came to world prominence in 2002 when she won an Olympic bronze in the 3,000 meters at the Salt Lake City Games. She retired at the age of 2015 at 35. As I said initially, a speed skating legend.
Yeah, she's absolutely incredible. And I have many, many visions of her, kind of when I was a teenager, of her being at the Olympics and, skating and taking off her the little speed suit, the cap, their little hood. I just have a memory of her, ripping that down as she crosses, after she crosses the finishing line. Carol Hoon is a wrestler, and she was the first Canadian woman in her sport to earn an Olympic title in 2008, as well as adding a bronze in 2012 in London. An 11-time Canadian champion. And I know we've had Erica Wiebe on the show before, and she's talked about Carol what an inspiration she was for her. And last summer, Carol served as Canada's assistant chef de mission in Rio. So last inductees on the women's side are the Edmonton grads. And so I just heard about the Edmonton grads actually about a year ago. They were brought up to me, and they are a women's basketball team that basically began in the 1915 era and had a 25-year run as, Canadian, North American, and world champions. And 16 straight world titles are some of the stats that they had.
And I remember, I think this was on the news at International Women's Day, because I don't think that this record has ever been beaten by any other sort of sporting context. That 502 to 20 record of wins.
Yeah, and so they had a run from 1915 to 1940, and they basically ended up disbanding as a result of World War II and the travel restrictions there. But just so incredible to think back, women's sports back in the early 1900s, and then being so incredibly successful, and as you mentioned, literally unbeaten with that type of record so far.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Long before the Edmonton Oilers were a dynasty.
That is true.
So next up, we have skating in the news.
Yes, so the International Skating World Championships were in Helsinki, Finland, and for the first time in the Canadian women's skating history, we had two women on the podium. Caitlin Osmond won a silver, and Gabriella Daleman won the bronze. And interesting, Daleman, prior to this year, had competed in a combined 5 world championships with a best finish of just 8th. So she was a real surprise, but did a fantastic job, landed the bronze.
Which is absolutely incredible. I mean, I figure skated for a very short amount of time when I was young, and I get emotional when I watch figure skating. It's so graceful and incredible. And at the same time, like, there's that powerful aspect with how aggressive they hit jumps and spin and the various types of maneuvers they do there. And
so many times I'm holding my breath just praying that they don't fall and that they get a clean program and that each jump is completed. And I watched both of their short and long programs.
And the idea of like bouncing along with your head or bobbing your head every time they take a step, just to make sure, like you said, holding your breath, making sure they have a clean run, pretty much no matter what country they're from. But so proud of our Canadian girls. And the next sport, or ice sport, hockey, World Championships taking place quite recently, and our national women's team took home silver, falling 3-2 in overtime to our friendly rivals, the U.S.
Yes, it's the second year in the row, or the second time in the row that the Canadians have lost. But the Canadian team has a remarkable record here, though. We've competed in every one of these World Championships since the beginning and have a record of 10 golds and 7 silver medals. We've never had less than a silver medal. And again, another remarkable record for a Canadian team.
Absolutely. And going back to summer sport, and another remarkable record is our soccer women who, have gone back-to-back bronze at the Olympics. They recently played Germany as well as Sweden. And so they beat Sweden, who were the last Summer Games runners-up. And so they beat them 1-0. And unfortunately fell to Germany, who are the Olympic champions, reigning Olympic champions, falling to them 2-1. Canada is currently ranked 5th. But what I find really neat is they played in front of over 10,000 people. And so many times I've been told that women's sports aren't marketable. And so to see these numbers, as Kim Donaldson and I spoke about on Ruck On show this month, about how many fans there were at the Six Nations games. And now with soccer, we filled the stadium here in Edmonton when they had the World Cup here. And now, number 5 versus number 1 team, over 10,000 people is pretty incredible.
And I'm going to jump in with a little story here from 2007. I was involved with the women's U19 FIFA World Cup. Initially, there was concern about how are we going to be able to sell tickets, and will anybody come and see this? And we had tremendous turnouts for those games, and it has grown. I've watched it grow over the years, and so seeing this kind of numbers now, it's really remarkable to see. Women's soccer has evolved and is quite exciting, and we want to be able to get people out to see these games so that they take advantage of the different kind of approach that women take to playing the game than the men do.
Mm-hmm. And going back all the way to February, 22,500 fans for the bronze medal celebration match that they had versus Mexico, where they also said goodbye to 3 of Team Canada's veterans. So over 20,000 fans, the largest ever for a women's soccer game in Vancouver. And so they said goodbye to Melissa Tancredi, Rian Wilkinson, and Marie-Ève No, and they ended up beating Mexico on that day 3-2. So again, another incredible celebration, and so important to recognize athletes who have given so much to a sport.
Melissa Tancredi and Rihanna Wilkinson were both there at the U19 games. Marie-Ève was not at that particular tournament. But, I've watched those women play for years, and it's really something to see them not only recognized, and especially in front of this many fans, but they've had a tremendous run over the last few years with the Olympics and have really done Canada proud.
Joining us now from Montreal, Saadia Ashraf, former quarterback for the national women's tackle football team and current assistant coach going into the 2017 Women's World Championships. Hello, Saadia.
Hi, Maria. Hi, Sooz.
Hi.
Welcome on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Saadia, you and I were teammates back for the Montreal Blitz many moons ago, and the Montreal Blitz is Canada's first women's tackle football team, full tackle football team, and you were kind of, one of the founders of that team and eventual president. So talk to us a little bit about the Blitz and how that came to be.
Well, Maggie Mayo founded the team originally, and then I took it over in 2004, 2005. And, me and Maggie and about 6 or 7 other girls, we used to go down to Rochester to play in the WPFL for the Rochester Galaxy. And as fun as that was, it was a 4.5 to 5 hour drive every weekend. So the year after, Maggie decided to start her own team, and here we are with the we were playing with the IWFL, and this year we changed to the WFA, the Women's Football Alliance.
And back when the Montreal Blitz started, it was fairly new for women to be involved in tackle football. Mm-hmm. A lot of women coming from maybe flag football backgrounds, mm-hmm. Touch football or various other sports, rugby, basketball, a whole bunch of slew of different sports. And so how has that transition now, almost 15 years later? Are women coming into the sport with more tackle football experience, with a pigskin in their hands?
Yeah, unfortunately, not tackle football experience still, because we're missing, we're lacking at the grassroots level. Like the younger kids. So when they come to the Blitz, they're pretty new. A lot of them are still from flag. We got a lot of basketball players this year, rookies. They come from all walks of life: rugby, soccer, volleyball, and some just maybe something like mixed martial arts, and they just want to try something else. So in terms of pure tackle football experience, it's rare. We do get the few, because you have girls in the high school level that they're playing with the guys still. But in terms of the grassroots level of play, unfortunately, we're still not there yet.
And have you noticed a big difference since a national women's football team has been put together, now going into the 3rd World Championships hosted from Canada in Langley, BC in June? Have you noticed a difference in terms of interest and more women wanting to get involved?
Yeah, that has definitely increased. The visibility of the sport in general across the country has increased. the level of play is very, very different than 2010 and even 2013. It was much stronger, and even now, just seeing the team going in, we see a lot, girls, kind of women taking it more, I guess, more seriously, training off season, realizing what it takes to play at an elite level, and that the word's getting out, and yeah, we do have more interest. We do some recruiting, but sometimes we get women that have just heard, they just happen to see something online or on Facebook or whatever, and so the word is spreading. And yeah, the interest is increasing, and the level of play, which is it's really neat to see how the level of play and the skills and talent in the sport itself have increased since back when we played and since 2010.
Yeah, and speaking of skilled players, you're probably one of the most skilled female football players in the country, and probably in North America, as a quarterback. And you attended the last 2 World Championships, and now you've transitioned into coaching the team. And if I'm not mistaken, you are the first woman who's been hired to coach a national football team. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm going to be. I was hired as the quarterback coach, so I'm a positions coach, and I believe it is the first time a woman has been taken on as in a full-time kind of role for the program, for any national program, I think.
So yeah,
that was sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, that's an honor, obviously, to have been hired, and whether it's me or another woman, I think it's just a great step forward for women. Kind of transitioning now, you have a big base of players that are playing more who will. Not everyone's going to transition into coaching, but at least now we have a larger. In English, I'm having trouble finding my words, but a bassin, like just a base of players that are learning the game and will be able to give back to the younger girls that will come into tackle football.
Yeah, absolutely. And from your own experiences, having probably predominantly only having men coaches yourselves as a player, do you think having a female coach on a female team brings kind of a different aspect or a different priorities to the game?
I think that's an interesting question. I personally have had all types of coaches, and yes, the level of play is you coach an athlete the way you coach any athlete, man or woman, but I think women you have to approach it a little bit differently, and I think having a woman on staff will help with that, but a lot of the guys that are on staff on the women's national team coaching staff, they have that experience already coaching the previous team. But what I think is interesting is kind of bringing, because I retired from playing very recently, so I kind of have a bit more of the, I guess still as a player, how to see things from a player's point of view instead of just a coach's point of view. So I think for me personally, that's that I do bring a little bit extra to the staff that way.
And Saadia, many women have been taught or socialized to believe that tough is not feminine. So, as both an athlete and as a coach, how tough is it for you to get women to be tough on the field?
I think if the women are coming out to play tackle football, I think there's a certain level of physical and mental toughness already there. For a rookie, it is difficult to get them to understand that you have to be explosive in your movements. You need to be aggressive in your movements, and you are going to hit somebody else. So when they kind of get past that hump, it's way easier. But yeah, getting them there, it's you just have to keep driving it home. Because women aren't used to playing contact sports. Yes, we do have a lot of, I guess, at the grassroots level, you have rugby, where the younger girls are playing. But in terms of football with the equipment on and whatnot, it's sometimes it's hard to get them to understand that aspect, and you just have to keep driving that that message home. Yes, you're going to have to hit that, but yes, you have to bring her down. Yes, and but once you pass that hump, it's like they have to do it a few times and they realize, okay, this is how it's supposed to feel. This is what it's supposed to look like.
So for someone who's interested in the sport but looking at it like, oh, I don't know, what advice would you give them to encourage them to try football in the first place? Tackle football.
Well, yeah. Well, I think first of all, if they're interested but they're not ready to make that step yet, that's okay too, right? I mean, Maria, you've played both like rugby and football, and you know that contact sports isn't for everybody, right? Like it's not something that everybody you might be interested in, but just because you're interested in it doesn't mean you're actually able to execute it. It's tough to mentally get to that point. But I always encourage people to come and try it. They got to come and try it, otherwise they're never going to know if they're on the yes or the no side, and they have to put on the equipment. They have to feel what it's like, and we have girls that come and after the first few contact practices with the equipment, they're like, I don't think this is for me, and that's okay, right? Because they have other strengths and other and elsewhere in their lives, but we just try and encourage, and a lot of it comes from coaching, right? Like if you just kind of throw them in there with equipment and say, go hit somebody, they're not really going to know what to do. So we have to coach them up. We have to teach them the proper technique and the most effective way of tackling, and hopefully they stay. But even after that, it's a reality. Not everybody wants to play a contact sport. It's not really for everybody.
Tell us a little bit about how the selection pathway works to get onto the national team, given it's, fairly infant sport on the women's side, probably a handful of teams across Canada. There is a national championship that I believe was used for the last Worlds. And so, how does that work? And are women now more coming from across the country versus kind of centralized programs, like the Blitz?
Well, I don't know. Maria, you're in Calgary, right? So there's WWCF, CFL, right? There's 4 or 5 teams in that league, and which is growing. It's in number of players. It's very interesting to see. And I forgot your question. Can you repeat your question, please?
It's just about the pathway to get onto the national team. So the regions, competing against each other.
That's right. So what we had there's ID camps in the East and the West, and the women that are interested, they come out, they take part in a camp, like a combine style camp. There's testing done. So there's one in the East. This year it was in Laval, just north of Montreal, and in 2013 it was in the Maritimes, and then there was one in Regina. And then, yes, they use the national championship also as part of that selection process. And then finally, there's a big conference call, and then we talk about the selection of the team. We watch the film, we give our feedback, and that's how the team is selected after that.
And with this competition still being in a pay-to-play model, what type of fees are the athletes looking at to be able to go to Worlds?
To go to Worlds, I believe it is somewhere in the realm of $1,800 to $2,000.
And are there fundraisers that are going to be happening? How can people help support, women's football in Canada?
So I believe each pocket of girls on different teams or different areas, they're doing fundraisers to kind of help each other out. So I know, every year the Blitz, we try and do random fundraisers here and there and try and change it up a bit. I know the girls on that are part of the Blitz on Team Canada will be planning an online auction to help defer some of their costs. I do know that in Regina they had, I think, a paint night fundraiser as well. So I think everyone's kind of doing small things to help defer their costs. And
Saadia, what would it take to get women's tackle football right into the mainstream, onto television, and into big exposure?
Dollars and cents, right? So we need the corporate world to be interested. We need advertisers, and we need the networks to be interested as well, and think and see that women's football, tackle football, is viable for them to show on the networks. And we need people to advertise. I mean, it really is coming down to money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
We can
Always.
we can help that. We can
Yes.
help that by getting people in the seats at the International Federation of American Football Women's World Championships, June 24th to June 30th, Langley, BC, at McLeod Stadium. United States has won the last 2 championships. Canada, this comes second both times, and they're going to be joined by Finland, Great Britain, Australia, and Mexico this year. So you can follow along on Saadia's Twitter handle, social media. You can reach her at SAADMANQB. That's SaadmanQB on Twitter. You can also follow the Montreal Blitz at Montreal Blitz on both Instagram and Twitter, and follow along Football Canada to watch Canada's women's football team journey as they go for the 2017 World Championships. Thank you so much, Saadia, for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
And best of luck as you continue your coaching career, and we'll be cheering on all the girls.
Thank you.
Wow, Saadia is such an incredible person, having been involved with tackle football for so long. I mean, she truly is one of the pioneers, I would say, for Canadian women's tackle football.
And, the more we see of these women who've been involved in their given sport for 15 or 20 years and have risen from really starting the sport at the grassroots level and moving from athlete to coach, perhaps administrator, it's really great to see, because this is what we need, is more women on the national scene in dynamic and visible positions to help encourage the younger women and to really put our mark on the national scene.
Yeah, and from a youth perspective, it's really about seeing these women and going, wow, someday I can do that too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so very, very true, that role modeling.
And now Chris Stafford is going to join us with news of other programs at WiSP Sports.
With more than 600 episodes across 20 different shows, WiSP Sports Radio covers every aspect of women's sports. Tune in to Locker Room Talk with Sarah and Kelly tackling the big issues of the day. The Sailing Show brings you the latest news of women racing in all classes around the world, thanks to our friends at the Magenta Project. And our Athlete Profile series features medal winners and extraordinary women who have made a difference in their sport. Subscribe to WiSP Sports Radio on iTunes so you can listen to the shows anywhere, or visit us at wispsports.com.
And you can follow us on our social media channels at WiSP Sports, or drop us a line if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions to info@wispsports.com. I'm on Twitter at MariaSamson5, and Sooz is at Coach_Sooz, SOOZ. Thanks, Sooz, for another show of WiSP World Canada.
Yeah, it was great to be here. We'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone, for listening.